Okay, good afternoon, Rebels. Good afternoon. How nice. Good afternoon, Rebels. Good afternoon. Mrs. Strebe. I am Mrs. Strebe. I teach English and I teach psychology in the building. And I'm also on the SAP team. I know you guys have had your SAP talk. So that's why I was asked to do this presentation on vaping. So right off the bat, let's make it clear, we all know what's going on. We all know people are vaping in the building. We all know freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors are doing it. We all know people have been caught, which tells us there's way more people who haven't been caught. Now, this presentation was planned a long time before today. We had started talking about it at the beginning of the year and then chose today. But we all know that more and more students are getting caught here. And so I'm coming from a place of concern, as are all the teachers and administrators in the building. But I'm not here to lecture you and wag my finger at you and give you all the, scare you half to death. I'm here as a psychology teacher to tell you what happens to your brain when you vape. Hopefully give you some information so you can make some good informed decisions. So that's the purpose. So did you know youth e-cigarette use increased tenfold in 4 years' time, between 2011 and 2015, and 75% in the last year, which essentially we might as well say almost doubled. Almost doubled in a year. In a recent study, though, 60% of youth incorrectly reported that there was nicotine in the e-cigarettes. They thought there wasn't. 60% thought all I'm doing is vaping bubble gum, vaping mint, vaping cinnamon. There's no nicotine in it. There is. A single Juul cartridge is the equivalent of a pack of cigarettes. Sale of e-cigarettes is now almost a $23 billion industry. Think about that, $23 billion. 74% of that $23 billion, Juul is making. So you think about that fact combined with the first one, they're not going to give up making this. Now, initially, e-cigarettes were touted as a way for people who smoked cigarettes to stop smoking, stop damaging their lungs, wean themselves off nicotine. But now look at what they're doing. They're grabbing you guys. They're grabbing you by making these flavors that appeal to youth. Adults don't go for bubble gum. When I go to the dentist and they ask me what flavor toothpaste I want, I don't say bubble gum. That's you. They're after you, and they want to keep you. $23 billion is a lot of money to give up. And if they can double the use in a year, imagine what they want to do. And when they say they're not trying to grab you, that's a lie. Because if they don't have you, they're not making $23 billion. So you need to keep that in mind when you think about the marketing of this. And when they say, because the government's looking at banning advertising to youth and of e-cigarettes, when they say they're not after you, that's not true. Because you're going to be using e-cigarettes a lot longer than I would be if I started right now. So you're being manipulated. That would be one thing I would like you to take away from this. Your brain, talking about the brain, is under construction right now. Anybody know how old you have to be before your brain stops developing? Later? In the back? 25. Keep them alive till they're 25. It takes until you're 25 for your brain to stop developing. However, neural networks are forming all the time. They're forming in every one of us. Every time we have an experience, every time we do something, neural networks go off and they fire. That's part of life. God bless you. Your brain, however, in adolescence is pruning off networks it doesn't use. So if you were playing the piano when you were 6 and you haven't played it since, those neural networks are going to be gone. Can you learn to play the piano again when you're older? Yeah, but it's not going to be easy. because your brain isn't going to be firing off the networks the way it was when you were 6. So it's pruning. It wants to make things efficient. Your prefrontal cortex, which literally is the front of your brain, is a part of your brain that's last to develop. That's the part of your brain that does your prediction, hypothesis, helps you control your impulses. That's what that part of your brain does, and that's the last to develop. Your brains right now, it's the amygdala that's in control. And the amygdala is our emotional fight or flight part of our brain. So what does that mean for you? It means when an adult, like a teacher in the classroom's like, why didn't you do your homework? You leave the room and you tell somebody, that teacher yelled at me. You interpret most emotion as anger or happiness, fight or flight. So when you're in conflict, especially with an adult, and they're in front of you, why didn't you do your homework? This is the third time you haven't done your homework, and you're sitting there like, I can't talk. You really can't. Because your amygdala has hijacked your prefrontal cortex, which allows you to reason, come up with an explanation. Nope, no way, no how. And that's why when you walk out of the room, you think the teacher hates you. Because your amygdala is going, warning, warning, I'm in danger, get out of here, or fight. It's why you say things sometimes that get you in trouble. Don't give me that attitude. Don't talk to me that way. That's your amygdala trying to protect you, trying to keep you safe. And that's what's in charge right now. So yeah, you do have an attitude. And yes, you do things that most of us as adults would think, what in the world were they thinking? So a few examples. Okay, so how many of you thought that was funny? How many of you would like to go out and do it? Yeah, see? Teen brain in action. Because I may think it's funny, but I think it's crazy. And in a million years, I wouldn't do that. That's your brain versus my brain. So you don't foresee I could break my leg, I could break the window, I could hurt myself. You don't see that because, again, that's your amygdala too, like, oh, that feels good. That's emotional high there. I want to do it again. That's the difference. Your brain has lots of cool stuff. There are cool things about being a teenage brain. You're innovative. You can be playful. You can be fun. But you can be irresponsible, and you can be angry, and you can be those things as well. And that's normal. And that's what we need to be talking about today. What is happening in your brain? So because your brain is in this midst of rapid neural firing and neural networking, things like nicotine affect it differently than it affects my brain. And that's the key. It's your brain is going to handle it differently than my brain is going to handle it. So some facts about nicotine. 1, it's a stimulant. So there are 3 categories of teratogens: stimulant, depressant, and hallucinogens. It's a stimulant. So what does that mean? It reaches the brain in about 8 seconds. It causes adrenaline to go off, stimulates. So it causes your heart to beat to increase. It causes your respiration to increase. It's getting a stimulant, kind of gets you ready to move. So it's drawing blood to the extremities. This is the key, though. It releases dopamine. And dopamine is the neurotransmitter that goes off when we do something we enjoy. And it makes us want to do it again. Video game people who design those understand this big time. When you play video games, dopamine goes off, and that's what keeps you playing the video game. Well, nicotine releases dopamine. And dopamine makes you do it again, do it again, do it again. And that leads to addiction. How long does it take to become addicted? So in one study, took teens only a few months. This also depends on how often you use it. But the other thing that you need to keep in mind is if you have anyone in your family who has an addiction issue, alcohol, tobacco, shopping, any kind of addiction issue, that has a genetic component. We know that for a fact. So if you have it in your family already, you are more sensitive to developing an addiction to something down the road. And you don't know what's going to flip that switch. So you need to keep that in mind. It's a double whammy there. One study concluded that nicotine is more addictive than cocaine or alcohol. More addictive than cocaine or alcohol. And it's tough to quit. I can't imagine that some of you don't have someone in your family who's tried to stop smoking over and over and over again, even after they get sick. My mother got emphysema and she still couldn't quit. She watched family members die from emphysema that was a consequence of smoking and couldn't quit. That's how addictive it is. 85% of people who try to quit on their own go back. What's addiction about? So again, the fact that your brain is firing, your brain is like, do I need to know, do I need to know, do I need to know? So as soon as you introduce these substances, it's wiring for them. Not like my brain. Signs of addiction. So let's lay it out. We know there are people in the freshman class who are vaping, in the sophomore class, the junior class, the senior class. If it's you, think about this in terms of yourself. If you know somebody, think about it in terms of your friend or loved one. Tolerance. So when you are addicted to something, you need more and more of it to get the same feeling you got at the beginning. That's the way our brain works. You need more and more and more. So are you finding yourself needing to vape more? Or is your friend vaping more than when they first started? That's tolerance. Obsession. Thinking. Are you constantly thinking, how do I get out of class? Can I get to the bathroom in third period? Can I do this in second period because the teacher's in the hallway? Can I do it while we're walking to class? I can duck in here. Is your friend doing that? Thinking constantly of ways to sneak and vape. That's an obsession. That's a sign of addiction. You figured out, I'm doing this too much. Or you're trying to talk your friend into it, and they're like, yeah, I'm trying to quit. I just can't. That's a sign. Using it even though you know the consequences. We all know you get caught in school, 3 days suspension. You get caught a second time, you could get expelled. Are you willing to take the chance? Are you willing to do it in class? Are you willing to do it in the hallway? Are you whatever? If you're willing to take the chance, what have your parents said? If they catch you, you can't, and you don't even care? You still do it? That's addiction. Withdrawal symptoms, you stop, and you get shaky, you get headaches, you get jittery. There's something physiologically happens to you, to your body, that as soon as you vape again, it goes away. That's an addiction. That's withdrawal that's happening. E-cigarette facts. 99% have nicotine in them. So do not fool yourself thinking that all this is flavoring and there's not that much. They all have nicotine. And again, go back to that first statistic. Why? Because they want to keep you as a customer, so they keep making money. One Juul cartridge, again, and I'm emphasizing this one because, as we know, 75% of the market is the equivalent of a pack of cigarettes. How fast are you going through that Juul cartridge or your friend? And think about that in terms of a pack of cigarettes. The makers of Juul, in particular, and this is why they have a lock on the market, have developed a system that delivers the nicotine almost 3 times faster than any other. That's why they have a corner on the market. And again, they're grabbing you even faster. And the thing I'm not going to talk about, and they're just doing studies on this, is the chemicals. There are chemicals in the e-liquid that are being ingested. There are chemicals in the vapor. So even if you're not vaping, but you're around someone who does, you're inhaling those chemicals. And we don't know right yet what consequence that is. But common sense would say we shouldn't be inhaling chemicals. So that's another thing that's being researched that you need to keep in mind if you're using or you're around someone who's using. This one's the startling one, I think, because again, e-cigarettes were promoted as being a way to help people stop smoking. So they're already smoking cigarettes, they use e-cigarettes, and they can stop smoking. Data now is saying that youth who start with e-cigarettes will eventually are 2 to 7 times more likely to vape than students who've never vaped. 2 to 7 times more likely, because cigarettes deliver the nicotine faster. So think about that. Again, it's not going to stop you from smoking necessarily. Why does that matter? So why do we care if we have nicotine in our brain? It stimulates us, dopamine goes off, so what? Again, your brain is different than mine. There are long-term, long-lasting possibilities of affecting your brain. Nicotine addiction. So again, even if we want to say that it's not harmful to your brain, the fact that it takes over your life, that an addiction takes over your life. You are constantly thinking about it. You're spending money you don't have or spending money on that instead of other things that you could be spending money on. You're constantly putting yourself in harm's way. That's bad enough. Mood disorders. So they're seeing a connection between depression in youth, bipolar disease in youth, and nicotine addiction. So they're seeing a correlation between the two. Permanent lowering of impulse control. Right now, you have lowered impulse control. You're going to go on the playground thing and spin around a million times and not realize that's a bad idea. But permanent, like when you should have that impulse control, you're not going to, because you have stunted that neural network from forming when nicotine gets in there. And attention and learning difficulties. Not simply because you can't pay attention in class because all you're thinking about is how am I going to vape, but your brain isn't forming the neural networks it needs to learn properly. Because again, that's what it's doing right now. And if nicotine is stopping that, then you're going to have a permanent stop. So are you willing to risk your brain? Think about it that way. Are you willing to risk your brain? As I said at the beginning, we know that there are people in every class all through the building who are vaping. You're no different than any other youth in the country. It's being declared an epidemic. If you are, or if you have a friend who is, and you want help, all you have to do is tell another adult in the building. You can go to your guidance counselor. You can go to SAP. Ms. Hendorf and I are the 2 teachers on SAP. But any adult, Mr. Bonich, Mrs. Aruda, anyone, and you will not be in trouble. You will not get in trouble. You will get in trouble if we catch you in the building vaping, if it falls out of your book bag, if we see it in your hand, if you pass it to someone else. That is when you get in trouble. You will not be in trouble. The purpose of this is to help you. If you want help, if those signs of addiction, if those things are concerning you, if you're even thinking about it and you want to talk to somebody, you will not get into trouble. So now's the time, if you're vaping, if you have a friend who's vaping, to tell somebody. And we will help you get the help you need to stop. And I hope that that's what you choose to do. Does anybody have any questions? Brain questions? Nicotine questions? Okay, think seriously. Do you want to risk your brain? Thank you for being such an attentive audience. Appreciate it.